Hello, brother and sister Seamuses around the world. Grab your coats and make sure those herrings are red, because this is the True Dicks podcast, where two reader authors discuss mystery, crime, and detective fiction through reviews, history, and theory of the craft. This is John Oakes over here, author of all sorts of stuff from Death Pope to the Chorus detective series, and I'm CC Wall, author of the Gavel books, let's say.
Author of some shit. You're not going to read it. No one's
read
it.
Today night, we're talking about penny dreadfuls and dime novels mostly, and kind of how that affects eBooks today and what we can learn from history, because those dicks who something history are doomed to repeat it.
Time is a flat circle.
There it is. All right.
Man.
So how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I just yesterday finished my first draft of my latest mystery. Pretty good stuff. You know, it's definitely a first draft. So I know exactly, what this first redraft is going to look like. So it's
and
good.
Do we have a title yet?
No, I'm working with a couple things. I've got a title I'm chewing on. We'll see. The title, I don't know. I'm going to do a little bit more work as far as looking at comparison titles and seeing what I like and what I don't. But yeah, what were you going to say?
What's your character? Like, what's the character's name?
Well, there's two characters. It's the first time I've ever written with a dual POV, by the way, which is fun.
Oh, wow.
So you have Solomon Aduo, who is half Nigerian, half American. And he's a state cop, right? So he shows up in a town called Harding, in a fictional state that I don't even ever say, what state it is. It's just the town in America. Town of Harding, named after President Harding, which he never gets any love. So, and you're asking yourself, really? There was a president named Harding? Like, I guess we could Google it to make sure. Wasn't it Warren G. Harding? Let's see.
Warren G.
Warren G. Harding. Exactly when was he president? 29th U.S. president from... Oh, come on.
Poughkeepsie.
Serving from March 4th, 1921 until his death. Oh, he died in office. The plot thickens.
Was he the one? No, he was the one who died of a cold, right?
Oh, he died? Okay. Died one of the most popular presidents in history.
Who doesn't get any love? Listen to this guy.
But this bunch of scandals came out after he died, and then that sort of tarnished his reputation. Interesting.
Was he the one that died after 21 days because he wouldn't wear a jacket during his inauguration speech and he caught pneumonia? Or
no, because he died a couple years in. We'll have to. Not enough presidential history on the Mystery Podcast. We'll have to we'll work on that. Anyways, fucking love it. So yeah, the town of Harding. So Detective Aduo shows up in Harding, and here's Detective Kyle Vellante. He's fresh, a couple months off of an undercover stint that wrapped up in a very messy, bloody way. And Vellante doesn't get a lot of love from his superiors. They kind of look at him as a, not necessarily a loose cannon, but the way Vellante puts it, nobody he works with will trust him. Hoity-toity people won't trust him, but criminals always seem to trust him. So he doesn't quite know what it is about him that causes that. But anyways, a murder goes down, and Vellante thinks that Aduo has been sent there to kind of like help out, and like they're not giving him the case when it should be his case. And he doesn't really realize why a duo is really there, and that's part of the mystery that evolves in the story. So yeah, these two detectives who don't get off on a great start with each other, kind of get off on the wrong foot, and for good reason. And so yes, both their POVs, and yeah, I like the way the book turned out. I did it using some different plotting techniques, like we'll talk about the plot genie at some point, I'm sure, but kind of where it generates some random points in the story, and then you have to like create, weave a story around those. So first time using that, I really enjoyed that. So yeah, I feel good about the draft. Not a very long draft, 50,000 words, but I tend to draft small, and then I kind of expand out from there. So it'll probably come in at about 65,000 words, I'm sure.
So you're a grower, not a shower.
I'm a grower, not a shower. Exactly.
That's
Most
awesome.
people have to cut when they finish their draft. And I actually cut stuff too. I'm like anyone else. I'll remove whole scenes or whatever. I'll still add, 10, 15% to the length of the draft through the editing process. Because yeah, when I'm in that pantsing creative or even plotting mode, I pretty to the point. I don't get lost on a lot of descriptions or exposition. It's kind of action based. So
I think the only thing I've ever cut was there was one chapter in Black Star Canyon that I cut the chapter in half because I thought it was giving too much away for the next season. But yeah, I don't tend to do that. But I'm working on what's that?
I was gonna say, how about you? You got any?
Yeah, I've just been working on. I've been working on that Sam Jack's Hollywood detective thing, and I think I did like a little survey with some author friends of mine for a title because I had a shitty title, and then I wanted a more provocative title. So
what did you pick?
I think I'm gonna do Starlit in Distress. It wasn't my favorite, but my
favorite was the Blue Movie Murders.
Yeah, that was.
I thought that had a ring to it.
It does, but I just don't know if Blue Movie is something that a lot of people know what that means anymore.
True.
So that was the only reason why I was kind of pulling away from that one. But I don't know. So I've been working on that, and
what's the main character's name? You called it something I haven't heard before.
Sam Jax. J-A-X.
Sam Jax. Nice.
Yeah, he's like. Did you ever watch Kolchak?
No.
Okay, he's kind of like that kind of guy. Like he's got like a plaid tweed coat, and he's kind of grimy, but not. And he has like a 1970 gold Cadillac convertible, and he's just like so obvious. Like he sticks out like a sore thumb, but you feel he's like the best like detective in the world kind of thing. And he has a relationship kind of with an aging stripper, but neither one of them can commit, so they're like just awkward with each other. But that's like his.
So you're borrowing from all your relationships with aging strippers.
Yeah, you
could never commit to fully.
Yeah, because I will never pay for someone to dry hump me, so I can't go to a strip club.
Here we go.
It's just something I feel very strongly about. I think that's just a total waste of money. So if we're gonna pay for stuff like that, we go to back alley prostitutes. If I want someone to pretend to have sex with me, I'll talk to my wife. Just kidding. Okay. So anyway, so yeah, that's what I've been doing. And I've been like plotting out so many different stories, and I need to just like really focus. I'm going to talk to my doctor on Monday about Ritalin and see if that's something I could take just for fun to see if it'll help me focus.
All the listeners need to understand that
That
this
really
gentleman lives in Hollywood. Okay, he lives a Hollywood lifestyle. He's getting recreational drugs from his doctor. He's having back alley sex.
I wish I was getting recreational drugs from my doctor. I'd probably be getting a lot more done. But you know how it is. But yeah, I have a new little segment that I would like to start.
Okay.
Called the Word of the Week.
Okay.
And this week's word is potboiler.
Potboiler.
Do you know what a potboiler is? Because I thought
no.
I knew, and I was wrong. I always thought
Let's
that was
hear it.
like...
I've heard the term, though.
Yeah, and I always thought it was something that meant like, ooh, like there's going to be a lot of like action right at this point. You know, that's when the
high
pot
tension
boils.
all the way through.
Apparently, it comes from back in the day when there were writers that nowadays we would call hack writers, who would just write these pot boilers, and what it meant was it would give them enough money to boil the pot. So it was just like a cheap
Writing
job
for
for
food.
them. Yeah, basically like just writing to get enough money. So basically it ended up being like the pulps and like just really lowbrow literature. And it's the correlation today would be like a popcorn movie kind of thing. So I just found that very interesting because I never knew that.
I know a lot of authors who wish they could reach those heights of being a potboiler writer. Yes. I bought food. I made money with a bucket. I bought food with it. This is fucking amazing.
I can fucking boil water. I'm the best there is. Yeah, no, that's good stuff.
Potatoes for everyone. Boiled potatoes all around. For all the boys and girls.
That's funny. We just watched what's that movie called with the love and hate? Are you kidding me? I'm not gonna with Robert Mitchum. Night of the Night of the Stalker? No. Night of the whatever. Anyway, so these kids are like on a little boat and they're like trying to run away from this guy. And they run up to this house and there's this lady giving food to all of these like homeless kids, but she's just giving them potatoes. And she's like just pulling out a potato and handing. She's like, here's your potato, here's your potato. And the kids are like, and just like eating a potato like an apple. And I'm like, fucking hell, dude. That's how you used to do it. We're us pansies with our mashed potatoes and baked potatoes and potatoes au gratin and all that stuff. I can't believe it. Night of the Hunter. Jesus Christ. Why was that so effing hard to do?
Back in my day, we had to walk to school with no shoes in the snow. Both hill.
Uphill, backwards.
Uphill both ways, eating a raw potato. We found by the roadside.
Yeah. So have you read anything?
That's a great word, potboiler. I love it.
Potboiler.
Man. Well, do you want to get into Penny Dreadfuls and whatnot and then do any review stuff at the end?
Okay, we can do that. Yeah. All right.
Speaking of words that I didn't really know the meaning of, Penny Dreadful. The first time I heard of Penny Dreadful was the Showtime horror show that I still haven't watched. Have you seen Penny Dreadful?
Yeah, it's okay. I was a little disappointed, but now that I know what it is, it's easier to watch.
Okay.
I was expecting something different.
Yeah, so the Penny Dreadful was kind of like this kooky British term for these stories that cost a penny. They would sell for a penny, the old style penny. in the United Kingdom, and they were generally looked at as being pretty dreadful. Like they were, what's the word? They were sensational and over the top and overly dramatic, and they were looked down upon. But that's kind of, I don't know. It's so funny how often those sorts of stories can really stoke readership. And the Penny Dreadfuls emerged in the Victorian era, like starting in the 1830s and 40s. And I don't know, we can get through the specifics of what they did and what they were about, but to me, it's always interesting to see how the way people read interacts with how societies change and all that stuff. So, you know, these over the top, you know, gaudy stories were really exciting for people, especially they were marketed to young men, especially working class men. So let's put it this way. An old penny was 12 pennies to the shilling, right? And then 20 shillings to a pound. Back in those days, you could live like a king on like 30 pounds a year or something like that. I mean, so a pound was a lot of money, and a penny was 1/240th of that. So it's a, I mean, a decent amount of money actually for a lot of really poor working class people. Boys would form clubs, and like one person would buy, they would pool money to get a penny together to buy the stories, and then they'd read them and pass them around and stuff like that. And young men who, in the age of industrialization, they weren't really prized for their ability to read or use their brains at all. They were kind of, you know, just today we use robots for, or sadly, people from, you know, the worst countries in the world to live in. You know, they have the most terrible mining and, you know, factory jobs and stuff like that. China and stuff like that, working in terrible factory conditions. That's what young men were needed for in the industrial era. But these stories, you know, if you look at why did lots of young men become literate in the Victorian era, you could point to the Penny Dreadfuls and say, well, that's actually the reason. Like the heady stuff that was not dreadful, but that was good literature. I mean, people didn't really get up for that. But these fun, over-the-top stories that people could read to make their terrible, terrible lives a little bit better got people excited about reading. And you could say especially young men, because that's who they were marketing it to. You know, so it's hard to say who was causing what there. It might be a little chicken and egg. But so yeah, I find that interesting that these Penny Dreadfuls could have been had a real societal impact. And yeah, these are silly stories, but look at you get people reading, you're doing a good thing, pretty much, you know. And there have been so many books that, I mean, Harry Potter, I think Harry Potter's fantastic. But even if Harry Potter had been as bad as, you know, some other super popular tripe, Harry Potter got my sister into reading. And like, she like now reading like defines her entire world. She's a librarian, she's a published author, she's a you know, like that's all she is now, you know. And I just think like, good gravy, like what happens when the whole society does that and starts reading? Well, that means that when it comes time to read something political or, you know, to fight the power, you know, you could use all the same tools that you use to enjoy and disseminate fun little stories. Well, you could disseminate, you know, back in the days before the internet, that was the only way to rally people and you know, disseminate political information, and you know what I'm saying. So I don't know, I think that it's kind of cool to think that these fun stories like Black Bess, you know, the tales of Dick Turpin, the famous semi-fictional, well, Dick Turpin was a real guy, but he was a highwayman, you know, robbing coaches on the road. But he was kind of made into like a hero, you know, an anti-hero, if you will. And so stuff like that, I don't know, might have had quite a big, there's got to be like actual scientific scholarly literature on this, which would be interesting to try to find. I don't know if I could still get into my old research data bases and stuff, but that'll be interesting to find out. But yeah, these were much like the pulp novels. These were printed on cheap wood pulp paper. And sure, some were actual books, but a lot of them came in what were called story papers or little periodicals that might only be like 8 pages long. And in that 8 pages, it could be like really big pages sometimes. You could have multiple stories, in a series where, each week you're getting such story number 6 and you're getting another story, section 10. And another interesting juxtaposition or counterpoint is that at this time, Charles Dickens was publishing. And a lot of people know Charles Dickens originally kind of published his stuff in serial format. But his stuff cost a full shilling for every part. That's 12 times what it costs to pick up a Penny Dreadful. So you can see, even though Charles Dickens was like exposing themes of poverty in a lot of his work had to deal with very, very poor people, and bring to light the really crappy situation of a lot of the people living in Victorian England. But he was selling it to middle-class people who probably didn't have the problems. You know what I'm saying? I think that's kind of interesting. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. But
I think a lot of that too is just, or do you think that it has to do with the fear the wealthy have of the poor?
Well, in his case, maybe not, because he wasn't necessarily saying, his books, at the end of Oliver Twist, the poor people don't rally together and murder all the rich people. You know, I think what he was doing, what middle-class people found alluring about his stories, was that they got to slum it. Like they got to, he romanticized the pickpocket. He romanticized the poor, destitute cousin who has no family anymore and comes to town, and you know what I'm saying? Yeah. What's funny is that like the Penny Dreadfuls basically took his stories and like they would do like thinly veiled total ripoffs. So you get Penny Dreadfuls called Oliver Twist, Nicholas Nickelberry, and Martin Guzzlewit, which I think was pretty funny. And yeah, a lot of the Penny Dreadfuls were dreadful because they were, just total ripoffs of other stuff. Interesting that Sweeney Todd, the character Sweeney Todd from the movie and the Stephen Sondheim musical, was actually from a sort of romantic Penny Dreadful called A String of Pearls. So that's interesting. He was probably the biggest character to come out.
I think so, yeah.
At least that we know of today.
Yeah.
Some of the bigger ones, let's see, forget the name of it. Sexton Blake. So if you were reading these later on, as the Penny Dreadful shifted into periodicals like Union Jack, which became a big, well, we'll get to that. But Sexton Blake was probably the name you would know the most. He's kind of like the Nick Carter of, the turn of the century, sounds like. But yeah, so basically a lot of people, the way people talk about video games and stuff, they thought that, well, because it's lowbrow art, lowbrow entertainment, that it's actually bad for society. And so here's a quote from a guy named Alfred Harmsworth, which he kind of sounds like a guy from Farmsworth, the guy from Futurama. Anyways, so Alfred Harmsworth, this guy, he was probably real fun at parties. He says, "It is almost a daily occurrence with magistrates to have before them boys who, having read a number of dreadfuls, followed the example set forth in such publications, robbed their employers, bought revolvers with the proceeds, and finished by running away from home and installing themselves in the back streets as highwaymen. This and many other evils the Penny Dreadfuls is responsible for. It makes thieves of the coming generation and so helps fill our jails." I love when the British spell jail G-A-O-L-S. That's funky. And so this Alfred Harmsworth guy starts selling periodicals that only cost half a penny, right? So he undercuts the Penny Dreadful, and they're often moralizing and like much tamer tales. But then eventually, right, it ends up being a bit hypocritical because to compete and keep these going, they had to end up like kind of going lowbrow again to outsell the Penny Dreadfuls. So I don't know, it's kind of funny.
And then as those Penny Dreadfuls were going under, he was doing that more because that's what the populace wanted.
Right. So A.A. Milne once said, and I'm reading straight from Wikipedia here, Harmsworth killed the Penny Dreadful by the simple process of producing the material as the publications. Oh, wait. Sorry. Harmsworth killed the Penny Dreadful by the simple process of producing the Halfpenny Dreadfuller, which is what the Halfpenny Dreadfuller was his replacement for the Penny Dreadful. So that kind of killed it. And then these sort of halfpenny stories, it wasn't really clear. It sounded like the Penny Dreadfuls kind of went away toward the end of the 19th century, and that what was happening in the early 20th century was like British comic magazines with like cheap production. Yeah. Anyways,
that's what's weird because it's you look at it and it kind of looks like it's the comics and stuff like that killed it, but it seems more like that was just the evolution of how
taste changed. I think the wars had something to do with it. World War I changed, like a lot of the Penny Dreadful style of printing kind of got co-opted by the government, making like war pamphlets and stuff like that. And so by then people were kind of looking for their entertainment reading elsewhere. So yeah, we were talking about ebooks. It's kind of funny that to kind of go back to the beginning of the origins of the Penny Dreadful, it really had a lot to do with the ability for the first time to make really, really cheap printings. And we say, oh, things are pulp because they're low quality. Well, yeah, but the low quality, it was good enough, it was good enough to put words on and get out to people. And so in a sense, you could say, oh, the pulp stories were lower quality. Yeah, but they were also a sort of technological revolution that gave people wider access to stories of all kinds. And I think in that way, there's a direct parallel to the ebook, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And then with the dime novels, let's come back to the ebook thing. With the Penny Dreadfuls, when I was kind of digging into it, I started because I had never heard of story papers, so I looked into that, and story papers actually started around 1777, and really started to take off around the 1830s, which I just thought was ridiculous. Like that's just like super fascinating to me. And then the thing that really made the Penny Dreadful kind of take off was the printing press and stuff like that becoming easier, but also railways. So distribution was then something that was a lot easier to do. And it's just weird because I would never have put that together as something that would make a form of crap fiction take off. You know what I'm saying?
Trains.
And yeah. And it's just like, it's kind of the same way, like with ebooks, which we'll get into in a little bit, but just like without the internet and without Amazon, there are a ton of writers, probably including myself, that would never have continued to write after their first shot at it or something like that. Just because of the distribution, the way things are distributed now. But as far as the dime novel goes, the dime novel itself has had different definitions over the years, but around the 1860s in America, the dime novel is kind of the American equivalent to the Penny Dreadful, sorta. But basically, it was a cheap book that was sold for a dime or 10 cents. And it basically was the size, started out anyway, the size of your standard like pocket paperbacks. And they were either digests or kind of how the serial periodicals were. And you were looking at kind of about 100 pages or so. So it was basically just like your typical, a little smaller than what ended up being the pocket paperbacks. And then as time started going on with these and them getting more popular, and the Civil War, and I guess it mainly was due to people writing letters back and forth to loved ones during the Civil War in the 1860s, that the literacy rate went up. And as the literacy rate goes up, people read more. And yeah, that totally caught me off guard. But as things go, you run into the same thing with, as literacy rates go up, there are people like with Homeboy and the Halfpenny Dreadful, crime goes up, or fear of crime goes up, because people start reading these stories of cheap, lurid crimes and mysteries.
Right.
And so the public starts getting weird, and then you'll have your people who try to shut it down for morality's sake. But then
and it takes one asshole. It takes one guy who actually gets inspired by one of these stories and does something and just stokes all these fears. When it's like the argument with video games. Like, people say, oh, if you play violent video games, you're gonna be a violent person, and that's been thoroughly debunked. And it was probably the exact same with the Penny Dreadfuls and the dime novels.
Yeah, and it's so funny because, like, with the video game rating system, with the parental advisory sticker on records in the like mid to late 80s, all that did was sell more records and sell more video. Like, if you could get an MA sticker on a video game, you're like, fucking yeah, we're gonna sell a shit ton of copies of this. So those people always end up screwing themselves and helping the people they're trying to fight. So let that be a lesson to all you assholes out there. And then basically around 1896, Frank Muncie, which on another show we'll talk a lot about, turned his little dime novel / magazine thing, the Argosy, into basically the first pulp magazine. Okay. And then as that went, the Nick Carter story dime novels turned into the new Nick Carter Weekly and your detective story magazine. So you started having these things where they would be called magazines or digests, and they would be coming out weekly. And as the turn of the century happened, a lot of bigger companies, like Street and Smith and stuff like that, would be buying up these dime novel manufacturers to take on their titles that have been slowly going the way of the buffalo, as these pulp magazines were coming out, because pulp magazines are bigger, flashier. They would have like full color covers that depicted tons of action, whereas a lot of your dime novels, some of them didn't even have covers. It was just be like, this is what it's called, and up yours kind of thing. Give me a dime. And then the prices were never really set, even though they were called dime novels. Some of them would be 15 or 25 cents. So that whole term like got kind of loose to the point where no one even really knew what it meant anymore. And then by the mid 20s, once Street and Smith basically bought the bigger dime novel companies, the dime novel basically ended. It was still used, the term was used up through the 40s, but the golden age and the big awesome dime novel rush was over. And so that's kind of the really fast history. But again, I love the fact that things like war and the Industrial Revolution, byproducts and literacy rates going up, which is a byproduct of people wanting to buy more books and stuff. It's an interesting thing. So with all of this, since John and I are both authors and we put stuff out a little bit of paperback, but mainly in ebook form, whenever I look at anything like this, I try to find things that I could take from this and put into my business today kind of thing. And what got me really thinking, especially, was the Penny Dreadfuls and them coming out to a penny, whereas the upper class stuff was coming up at 12 pennies or shilling. Mm-hmm. And then the way the Penny Dreadfuls died was some asshole came around and did a halfpenny dreadful. Mm-hmm. So I'm like wondering if that's kind of the same way how when everyone started doing 99-cent ebooks, and that was like, oh my gosh, these indies are doing these 99-cent ebooks, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, and now we're doing perma-free. Suck it, mister. Mm-hmm. We're putting our stuff out for free. And now there's a flood of free books. Do you think that undercuts the, what's the word I'm looking for here? Undercuts the value of how people look at the ebooks that they're picking up for free or for $1?
That's interesting. We get into the psychology of readers today. I would say this. I don't know if it compares to that because it definitely compares in the sense that if you look at the price distributions between fancy people books and scrub writer books who are people who are building a career and people who are on their own, and then the traditional publishers, let's say. I mean, if you look at the price disparity in an ebook, it's going to be about 12 to 1. It's very common. Bare minimum, usually, if your book comes out from a major publisher, your Kindle version is going to cost $9.99 minimum, and on up to $13.99, somewhere in there. And right in the middle there would be about $12. So it's funny how the distribution is still 12 to 1, comparing the shilling and the penny. Something funny. I don't know if there's ultimately a lot of meaning in that, or a lot of big takeaway, because back in those days, if people were able to get stories for free, they would have been like, oh man, this is the greatest thing ever. I got a free potato and a free story. Fuck yeah, everything's awesome. Because the poverty that people were experiencing in Victorian England doesn't even compare to poverty in 2016 in England or America. And when people get stuff for free now, they don't appreciate it. They don't. No. It's not because there's so much that they can. I mean, they pay their monthly Netflix or whatever. They get everything for free. You get, people can just download stuff, steal it for free. And what ends up happening though is that the kinds of readers you get when you put a book out there for free for a long time they're a lower quality of reader. Their reviews are less coherent than people who pay. Their reviews are often really nitpicky. You're going to get a lot more negative reviews because they just don't appreciate. They have no appreciation for what they're picking up, and there's no cost to downloading the book, so they don't even really read the description. you know what I mean? There's just all these reasons why. I mean, that doesn't mean they're bad people, but there's built-in ways that when people get books for free now, it makes them less attentive. It makes them more prone to negativity. It makes them more easily prone to pick up books they shouldn't really be reading based on their tastes. So no, I don't think that free benefits authors today the way to say the Happiny Skullduggers, whatever they're called. You know, I don't think that the way the Penny Dreadful died could ever happen now, because the only way to undercut 99 cents realistically is free, and free just doesn't have the same power that the Happiny stories had economically.
Well, look at 2012 with the Kindle Gold Rush and all those.
Yeah, a couple years ago. Yeah.
Like just making bank off of 99-cent books and their free runs and all that stuff.
Yeah,
it's a completely different vehicle now than it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
And honestly, it could change again to where free could work again. Not to get too much into a sales podcast, but
totally.
one thing I have been thinking about is like, well, I've said to myself, I'm never putting a book out for free again, because it's just not worth it. But then I thought, well, what if I wrote a book that was designed to be a free book?
Yeah.
And when I start to think about that, I kind of, well, you know what it's got to be? It's got to be a fastball straight down the middle of a well-established genre. It's got to hit all the major notes for people. It can't be too long. It can't be too short. It has to. You basically are shooting for how to be the most not unlikable product you can possibly find. Like the least offensive. Like, because what offends readers isn't what offends people normally. What offends readers, like, it's sex and violence and language. Only small amounts of readers really get offended by that. What really offends people is when they don't get what they thought they were getting. And so you have to, once you align those things, give people exactly what they think they're getting, give it to them straight, beginning, middle, end, satisfying conclusion, no cliffhangers, no bullshit, the end, done. I think that could be, that sort of thing could be, and it could still be a great read, a fun read, you know, with all your twists and turns. That sort of book could review well in a perma-free sort of situation, and draw in readers to your other stuff.
A lot of bigger publishers, like the big 5 publishers, when they put free books out, it's usually like the first 6 to 12 chapters of the new book by so-and-so. And they usually put it out like a couple weeks before the release of the book. And that's something interesting that I think I might want to try one time or something.
That is interesting. But, although the rules for what a traditional publisher can get away with and what, you know,
oh, they can do whatever the fuck they want.
CC Wall can get away with is, you know.
Hey, don't start fucking limiting CC Wall. CC Wall will start fucking throwing bows.
CC Wall, go to your corner.
Oh man. Yeah, but so that's the show. That part of the show. Yeah. Good stuff.
Something to think about. Something to keep thinking about.
For realsies. So as far as anything you've read, have you been reading anything?
Haven't been reading much. I started reading this sort of like cyberpunk, futuristic. What it is it's a detective story in kind of a sci-fi futuristic world. It's called. Oh, come on, John. Let me look at my Kindle. It's by a buddy of mine, really good author, named. He goes by so many pen names I can't keep track. His name is Chris Hayes Kosman, but he goes by Christopher Ruz. It's called Weary. Weary as in tired. Christopher Ruz, R-U-Z. Weary, W-E-A-R-Y. Really good. I suggest people check it out. I haven't finished it yet, But it's like a novella. It's probably like 100 pages long or something like that. Or no, it's 64 pages long in the Kindle. I guess in a more elaborate review, I could finish up talking about the Hap and Leonard books that I read. The third one was called Two Bear Mambo, and I'd say it's one of the strongest of the three for sure. There's a strong mystery element. That this one, they are really like going in and doing detective work, more than in any of the three books, really. It's a classic mystery. Someone's missing. It's someone they care about, but they're a little bit detached from the person at the same time. You know what I'm saying? And so other characters in the story are more invested than they are. So they're a little bit set back. Anyways, they have to go to this incredibly racist town where it's not okay for a black man and a white man to be friends. And there's a very caustic sheriff and a bunch of shady characters. And it's a good book with some really good characters and some good dialogue, some really funny scenes between the sheriff and Leonard, and stuff that I could not repeat because it gets pretty foul. There's some good action scenes, good stuff where there's, get ambushed and they got to sneak around in a swamp, and definitely some good ass kicking. I will say one thing about the Hap and Leonard story started to wear thin for me. Every time Hap and Leonard get in a fight, it seems that it's with some 6'8", 300-pound, well-muscled motherfucker. It's just like, really? You can't ever just get in a fight with someone his own size, or even just like somewhat bigger? Like, they always have to be huge, hulking. Like, I get that you want to create tension in the story, and you want to go, oh, holy shit, that guy sounds terrifying, and Hap's going to get in a fight with him? What? So, I don't know, that whole thing, I'm like, really? Again? And if I read the fourth book, I swear to God, if they get in a fight with some big bruiser, I'm going to be like, come on, really? Really? Where are you getting all these guys, Joe Lansdale? Are there really that many, 6'9" monsters in Texas, East Texas? But
Yeah.
I don't know. Some authors, I don't know. I think he rode that one trick pony enough. I hope when I get around to reading the fourth book that they beat up like a little person or something. Just change it up. I don't know.
Well, in
fight
kind
someone your
of
own
that,
size, Hap.
in kind of that same vein, every woman that Al Wheeler runs into is a knockout.
Right.
Yeah. So wherever Al Wheeler lives in Pine City, which is fake, I'm pretty sure, the women are amazing. But yeah, I finished The Lady is Transparent, which was amazingly fun. It was the one where
That's Carter Brown?
Yeah, that's the Carter Brown book. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But this is the one, I think I talked about it last week. I just started it. It was someone was killed in a house that everyone believed was haunted in a locked room. And he had to go and find out from the family that lives in the house what was going on. And they're all telling him the story of this curse of the house. And he has to try to prove that one of the people in the house were the ones that actually murdered them and what the motive would be for doing it. And there's hot chicks in it, obviously. And it was really, really good. It's seriously probably one of my favorite Carter Brown books that I've read so far. And then I also read The Hellcat, which wasn't as amazing, but that one was somebody gets ran over by a car in a hit and run thing, and they think it's an accident, but Al Wheeler thinks it's murder, and kind of starts digging around some ad agencies and the guy's ex-wife and all this other dirt, skip tracers and all sorts of stuff to try to find out who would have killed him for what reason. And as it goes, the plot gets thick. So that one was okay. And now I'm reading The Loving and the Dead, which is another Carter Brown book, but this time with a hot blonde detective named Mavis.
Mavis.
Boom. Yeah. And she talks.
Mavis is now a 90-year-old lady at the home.
No shit, right?
It's not looking as good as a
But
glory
yeah,
days.
she's super hot. She wears sweaters that are 2 sizes too small and strapless bras. And she means business. So
right.
those are a whole lot of fun. But I did go to the vintage paperback collectors show and sale on Sunday. And I got a shit ton of stuff.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah. Well, I was really afraid that everything I was going to see there was going to be like super fucking expensive, which a lot of it was, like $50 paperbacks to $250
that's nuts.
Freaking old pulp magazines and stuff. They had some of the old Argosies from like 1900 and stuff like that. It was just crazy, all the shit they had. But there were a couple vendors that if you wanted to dig through boxes under the table, it would be anything for $1 or $7 for 7 books for $5 kind of thing. So I ended up picking up like 30 Carter Brown books.
Jeez.
Which was amazing. So I have enough Carter Brown books to last me probably till the end of the year. Maybe not. But I also found a lot of cool, one of my favorite pulp, hero pulp guys is this dude called The Spider. And they ran in the pulps, but every 20 years or so, some publisher will pick up rights to some of the stories and put out like paperback editions. And I got quite a few different ones of those. And I got an older copy of I the Jury, the Mickey Spillane, because like the one I have is like the 76 printing, and I think I got the 32nd printing. So it's just a little cooler. The cover's a little nicer. But one of the vendors had books, and I got some gold medal, Fawcett gold medal books from this one vendor, and they felt a little damp. Once I got home, I was feeling them and smelling them, and they smelled a little funky. So they've been in my car for the last week trying to, well, since Sunday, I'm trying to like cook the mildew out of them. Trying to heat them in the heat of the car. But
should put them in the oven.
I was thinking about that or the microwave, but I'm gonna look up and see like what horrible things can happen, because I know as long as it's not 451 degrees, burn, supposedly.
Yeah, those pages though, they've been treated with chemicals, so it's probably not 451 you got to get up to. But but you could put your oven on like the lowest setting and crack the door open. Pretend you're making beef jerky. Probably the same process. Trying to dry mildew out of a book, making beef jerky, same thing.
Yeah.
Crack the door. It's all good.
So long story short, like I got a ton of cool shit, and I really didn't spend that much money. I think I spent like $40 in total,
wow.
And I ended up getting a lot of books. So I'm not going to be going to any bookstores for a while. I have way too much sitting around.
Yeah, you've bought like 60 books in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's been awesome. So I need to start actually building bookcases or something, because I'm running out of room. So
I went to a used bookstore. You know, once we got started talking about this stuff, I wanted to know more. I want to try to get my hands on some. But man, Minneapolis is just, I don't know where to go to find these hauls you're making. I couldn't find crap. I had a big list of all the kind of authors I was looking for, and couldn't find anything at one of the biggest used bookstores in St. Paul. So,
well, another cool thing I got was Flying Saucers Are Real, and this is number 107 from Gold Medal. So I'm super geeked on that. But a lot of this was like one of the first books. And when we talk about Gold Medal, which I'm sure we're going to eventually, this was one of the first paperbacks that they started putting original content in. And so I don't even know if I'd ever actually read this, but just from the historical aspect of it, I got really excited when I saw it. But yeah, dude, I got so much cool shit.
Yeah.
So
I wish we lived in the
anyway,
same town. I want to like borrow all your books.
we should start doing a book of the month mailing thing or something. I don't know. I could send you 1,000,000 ebooks in a matter of seconds. But as far as these ones, we would have to actually plan some sort of awesome mailing thing.
Yeah, it gets a little bit complicated trying to mail books. It can get real expensive real fast.
Yeah.
I just gotta find need to find some old used copies for cheap on Amazon where they're trying to sell them for like a penny or something.
Go to
You just gotta
have
pay
you
shipping.
read eBooks?
Sorry?
Abe Books.
Abe Books? Oh yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, that I get a lot of stuff from them too.
Okay,
So
I'll check that out.
pretty good prices.
Yeah, I want to get some older books. I used to love reading the James Bond Signet Classics. Something about a book that's that size and the older paper. I don't know. It's good stuff. I like reading stuff from another era too. I really like reading stuff from, another era because I don't know, like the formatting is different, the syntax is different. Like you can just, I don't know, it's just a good reminder that the culture of writing now isn't the way it was 60 years ago necessarily, and that's not wrong or right. It's different.
And
Sometimes people get so.
I'm bringing back adjectives and dialogue because
Adjectives and dialogue.
Fuck
you mean
yeah,
adverbs?
Dude. There you go.
Adverbs. Yeah,
I'm hitting it, dude. I'm tired of people telling me I can't do it when everyone back in the day did it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on. I don't know. I like a good adverb. I like to throw down a good. I had an editor who, nice enough guy, but his editing style was very caustic, and he was very rude in some ways, and he would kind of very disdainfully talk about, oh, you had a person nod their head with an adverb. Oh, like oh, I'm just like, get you a fainting couch. Jeez, like anyway. So sometimes I want to have a character nod their head with an adverb just to fuck, like, go fuck yourself.
And I'm just gonna say, and he said assholey.
Assholishly. Yeah, I think readers would really appreciate it. That's what you should do. Don't just go scattering your adverbs like crazy. Make your adverbs super awesome and make it perfectly, updated for the 2016 crowd, so future authors can look back and see. Yeah, like, wow, assholishly, first used by author C.C. Wall. And yeah, that'd be funny.
Cockishly.
I feel about adverbs, like everyone loves Stephen King's advice and yada yada, and I'm like, okay, he's one writer, like he's not fucking Jesus, like it's a good. So much writing advice is like extremes. Oh, you never do this or you never do that, and it's just like, really, never. Across all these different genres and all these different readerships and all these different authors, there's no such thing as never. Sorry. Like if you want to make an argument for why adverbs make writing feel clunky or less descriptive, then you can make that argument, right? And I like the argument, but I also like adverbs. Like they exist totally. They exist in the English fucking language for a reason, and oftentimes they're very appropriate in dialogue tags. It's just like, or action beats between dialogue.
Yeah.
He sipped his coffee pensively. Like that's a thing. Someone could sip their coffee pensively, deep in thought, and you could sip your coffee right now, and I could be like, that's a pensive motherfucker, and I could tell just by how you're sipping your coffee. Some adverbs are shitty, like he sipped his coffee, disdainfully. Well, that's not really a thing. And if I saw that adverb, I'd probably be like, yeah, let's get rid of that. He just sipped his fucking coffee, That's not a thing. So, I don't know. Yeah, man. Use your fucking adverbs when you want to.
Have you read
John's James over
10 Rules of Writing?
I'm sorry?
Have you read the Elmore James thing, 10 Rules of Writing?
Was it Elmore Leonard?
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Yes. Oh.
Yeah. President Elmore James died after not wearing a coat and got pneumonia. No.
President C.C. Wall needs to not be running around from hospitals right before he does his podcast.
No, it's all good. For some reason, when I get on this podcast, I can't remember anything that I've learned either.
Well, anyway, the 10 Rules of Writing is
rules.
actually, yeah. And I think the last one is like, don't listen to what anyone fucking says.
Yeah, his are ones that are often quoted. He says don't use adverbs, don't use exclamation points, and those things
But then at the end of each thing, he says, it's like, but if you want to, knock yourself out.
That's funny. Yeah, and people get so nitpicky about stuff like that. Like I follow a lot of agents on Twitter, and like they'll just get on their soapbox like, oh my God, I just saw so many exclamation marks. And it's like, okay, like that doesn't mean that you're a good person and they're a bad person. You realize that, right? Like sometimes people talk about these things like there's us and them, like all those dumb people who use exclamation marks. I spit on you. You are beneath me. It's just like, okay.
Fucking rants.
Anyways,
we are upset today. Well, anyway,
but I like
the end of our hating to everything.
Okay, fine.
Go ahead.
Be done with hating. No, I was literally just gonna say, to put a cap on it. That's why I like reading older style books, because it does kind of kick me out of my own prejudices, you could say. Because when I read a book, I expect things to be a certain way, and sometimes things can get a little bit hairy. And yeah, you read something from another age, and you realize, well, a lot of that stuff is just like almost cultural, you could say. It changes over time. Grammar is taste, and there's no accounting for taste in some ways. So yeah, got to get my hands on some older books there.
Right on, man.
Podcast over. Cool. Clocking in at an hour. A crisp, clean hour. Pinch it off. We're done.
Gross. So until next time, everyone, keep your dicks private. And that's it. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.